Hello, you're listening to the Leadership Woman podcast with me, Jill Saville. And today, as my head is very heavily into the Leadership Forum for the British Chamber, I'm going to talk to you about climate change. Now, first of all, let me say I am absolutely no expert on this, but right at this minute I'm an enthusiastic amateur, and as part of the human race, clearly I have a vested interest. When we think about this subject, it is so fast with so many moving parts that we can just get bogged down in all of it. And what I want us to think about today is, well, what does it mean and what do we need to do? And this word that keeps coming up for me is transition. Transition, apparently this word was in the Paris Agreement. It's talking about transition, societal change that is needed in order for us to meet these goals, these targets, and save the world. But certainly I don't see much evidence of it, particularly in the UK. What do I mean by that? I think because I live in Europe, there's an awful lot happening here. A lot is talked about, particularly led by the Netherlands, I would say. And then recently I went to the UK. I've not been there for over a year. And I happened to look at some new build houses, and there was absolutely no mention of any change in these new build for the future. It's still putting in gas boilers. So we just need to give some thought to, if we want change in the future, then we absolutely need to make changes now. And what kind of transition we have, what kind of transformative adaptation we have, which I'll talk about later, really depends on when you begin. And the later you begin, then obviously the more drastic action needs to be taken. You just think about repairs needed to your clothes, garments, not that people tend to repair clothes, certainly in the Western world these days. But I know my grandmother used to, and she used to say, a stitch in time saves 9, which, when you think about it, is blindingly obvious. So the less change, and I suppose all of us want the least change, needs to be started sooner rather than later. So what is stopping it? I think we're getting distracted. There are a lot of, it's how we're made up, our personalities. Some people are more flexible. Some people are quite sticklers to the old ways of doing things, and they criticize any attempt, even if people start to do something to change things, then there are many that jump on them for the small things that they've not thought about. So it puts people off trying to change. Whereas what I'm thinking is we should applaud anybody that's trying to do something and help them. If they need to adapt their ideas, then we help them with that. We don't just pile on and criticize them. For example, Extinction Rebellion, there was a lot said about how these people travelled to London in order to protest. Comments like, well, I bet they still own a car. Well, you know what? Most of us still own a car, and we shouldn't be picking up on small things. We need to look at the bigger picture. Something else that's distracting us from it is this division. We have a huge division in society. We have an economic division because we've got this interest to give shareholder value and short-term gain, whereas there's a move to have more long-term goals, and for businesses to actually do good, not just not do any harm, but to do good. There's a book just out this week called Net Positive by Paul Polman. You'll probably remember he was the former CEO of Unilever, and someone called Andrew Winston, I believe. I've not read it yet. But it is talking about transforming organisations so that they actually do good. Another thing that prevents change is all the politics around it, all the social media, huge disinformation, misinformation, conspiracy theories about any topic that you can imagine. And I suppose if we've still got people around who think that the earth is flat, then you can see just how long it takes the whole human race to move forward with ideas. And all we can do is do our best and be part of the front runners, be part of the solution. I always remember Paddy Ashdown coming, the dear departed Paddy Ashdown. Now, he came to talk to the British Chamber in 2015. He was talking about climate change then. He was talking about the need for collaboration, the need to stay in the EU. In fact, that was why he was talking. And he talked about refugees from climate-ravaged places. He said that we would see migration that we had never seen before. He was somebody who was thinking and talking about action that we needed to take. And of course, that was 6 years ago, and we are more divided than we've ever been. So for me, we need collaboration. I've been listening to a couple of YouTube videos by Dr. Rupert Reed, and he's talking about this transformative adaptation, this adaptation that humans need to make. In 2019, he wrote this book with a fairly uplifting title called This Civilization is Finished, and he talked about transformative adaptation, what we needed to do, and there were 3 scenarios that he came up with of how society would change, and I quite like these 3 thoughts in that it's an easy theory to think about, to hold in your head. The first idea was that society could go into some kind of chrysalis like a caterpillar and come out like a butterfly. So huge change, but that society actually takes control of it. It's deliberate change and deep transformation, which is another phrase that is being talked about, is in fact needed for this, because we are leaving it longer and longer to make these changes. So do we want to be the butterfly? Probably. The second scenario that he thinks is more likely now is the phoenix scenario. If you remember, the phoenix rose from the ashes, so there's something that rises from the ashes, but the ashes being that actually we've not managed to take control of this. We have just seen society collapse, but something will rise from the ashes. But it will only rise if we do start to make some change. And then, of course, there's the third scenario, that we become extinct, which he calls the Dodo Scenario. So what do we want to be? Do we want to be the butterfly, the phoenix, or the dodo? And if we want to be the butterfly, slim chance, but if we would like to, then we need collaboration. We need empathy for other people like we've never had it before. If you remember Simon Anholt in the Leadership Forum last year, he talked about 3 stages of human development. The first one was survival. The second one was competition. And he believed that the third one was collaboration. And that would be needed to solve any of our big problems today, like COVID, like climate change. Just a few things there then for you to think about. I'm recording this on a beautiful sunny Sunday morning, and I really want the world to survive for my children, for my grandchildren, and also because I've got a few years left in me as well, and I'm sure you have too. If you liked this podcast, then please click on follow so that you'll be notified every week when there's a new recording. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.